this is not over. This isn't a, because I take it to heart, like, that's a win for them.
This story was never about wins or losses. This is about truth and justice and finding the facts to what happened to those 4 individuals. And now we have a new judge, a new venue, a whole lot of finger pointing and possibly new evidence. The situation is entirely a mess right now. And it's time to say enough is enough. So welcome to The Point. Let's get to it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Let me start by saying we're all here for those 4 individuals. What happened to those people was an absolute tragedy, and it didn't have to happen. And the wheels of justice do turn painstakingly slow. Now, for a long time, I laid off the Goncalves family, given they lost their daughter and we can never truly understand what they're going through. At least I can't specifically. But we're fair on this channel, and if more fair coverage and an open conversation is something you prefer, subscribe to this channel and hit that like button down below. Because a lot of y'all, through various reasons, thought JJ being gone was a good thing. And the Goncalves family said this: "The family is incredibly disappointed in the judge's ruling granting the change of venue. The only good thing about this decision is it will be Judge's last decision on the case. The family has always felt that Judge favored the defense, and it was a common thing that whatever the defense wanted or needed, they got."
I think the judge was in over his head.
To me personally, I've always thought if a judge wasn't making one side happier than the other, they were probably doing a good job in making their decisions based off the law, which is what we all want at the end of the day. But was JJ over his head and he was just too small for a moment so big? I don't necessarily think so. Was he hesitant to make decisions? I mean, sure, but that doesn't make him indecisive. But don't we want every judge to make a ruling based off the law? And making a quick decision isn't always the best decision. But what type of judge are they looking for?
I think getting a judge in that's way more decisive with a heavier hand and ready to hit the ground running.
But this is a double-edged sword, and that sword may not swing in the direction they want it to. But did JJ make a lot of rulings in favor of the defense? Well, yes, he did, but why? Well, the Goncalveses say this right here.
Another issue was the poor cross-examination by the state of the defense expert witnesses. A judge can only rely on the evidence presented, and when you don't properly cross-examine expert witnesses or present any of your own, you are left relying on the opinions of the defense.
So we hit the ground first and we said, you got to be more aggressive. You guys have to be more aggressive. And they pushed back at us. We told them they needed to be a little more aggressive, maybe a lot more aggressive. It's time to put your foot down and say, okay, the way you've been doing it isn't working. I'm not going to risk my daughter's life over, you guys playing little games of not cross-examining and not doing the extra mile. If the other side's going to be working till the very end, till an hour left of the courtroom, then you know what? You talk until the end and then we do it again.
Now, when he's right, and I do agree with a portion of what he said. We all have seen the prosecution at times look like a deer caught in headlights. In fact, I've made videos in the past stating that very thing, saying they look underprepared and they're not performing very well. But I don't think that's why they lost a lot of these motions. In fact, in that most recent hearing, they did make and raise a lot of good points in this whole change of venue argument. But I personally think they lost a lot of these motions simply because Ann Taylor was factually right. Now, you can feel free to disagree down in the comments below because this is an open discussion channel. But check this out.
We can course correct. We can get this fixed. We can get the right guy in the right chair and we can go from there.
Now, I don't know if he misspoke or I misunderstood him, but how are you going to get the right guy in there? Were you going to do this by causing public pressure? I just don't personally understand that type of thinking.
We can get this fixed.
First, Judge Hippler has now been named. He's not necessarily what I would call a senior judge, but he does have a lot of experience. He did give a speech to a recent CO graduation, talking about the importance of humanity in our judicial system. Essentially saying, if we can't treat prisoners humanely, what does that say about our society? And our judicial system needs to reflect our society, the best of what our society has to offer. And I personally agree with that. And in 2021, he held the lieutenant governor accountable over public record laws. So we will see how all this stuff goes, but don't the Goncalveses own a piece of this debacle? Now, I'm not a professional, and everything said here is alleged. Please do your own research and form your own opinion. But who went on national TV and said Maddie was the target? Who told everyone they discovered the timeline? And who's been conducting juror interviews? How do they not own a bit of this? Yes, the victims have rights too, and the family deserves closure. But moving venues was simply the right decision because you're pumping out prejudicial information that you say as if it's a fact. They were the ones who told everybody the victims were stalked. They were the ones who went on national television flashing that Instagram account of Brian Kohlberger. And come to find out, that's all fake news. And that's not fake news based off what I said. That's fake news based off the defense, the prosecution, and the former judge. I mean, if I've missed something, then you can please let me know down below. Because to me, it seems that at times they are working against the gag order and what the gag order was intended to do. And their focus is on orange jumpsuits versus suits, vegan meals and haircuts, rather than understanding the constant leaks of information, both true and false, were causing problems within that community. Now, they were right to call out Scott Green saying this on Facebook.
And at the same time allowing Scott Green, the University of Idaho president, to write a book claiming to be an integral part of the investigation.
But wasn't the gag order supposed to stop the leaks and the spread of misinformation? But then they go and say this right here.
A reminder that there was DNA evidence found on the sleeve underneath the leg. That good luck with that. Let's bring it on. Don't be scared of this.
So you tell me, did he mean to say that, or did he misspeak and now we have more misinformation? Seriously, which is it? At this particular point, I'm almost thinking it was an error to lift the gag order on the families, because this was the type of comments that led us to where we are today. I'm almost guessing that if he meant to say it, then he said it to prime the new area of Ada County with new information to ensure Brian Kohlberger gets convicted. That is just speculation, of course. But we know Brian being in a suit bothers them. We know the lack of farmers in Ada County is going to bother them. And we know that they don't feel like they're in control. At least based off recent interviews and statements from several major news sources. But those allegedly were the concerns that they had. So was that statement deliberate? Is this the type of statement you could use to generate new interest in a new county? Because we know that they want to feel welcome in Ada as they were welcome in Latah. And I am sure they're going to be welcomed in that county as well. They will absolutely have the sympathy of a lot of people, and they have my sympathy despite me saying what I'm saying. But why mention DNA found on a sleeve underneath a leg? Unless he misspoke, and that's misinformation. On one side of it, you could think that he was talking about a pants leg or a pajama leg. But I've never heard anyone call those leg sleeves. Unless he was referring to a sleeve on a shirt found underneath a leg. Or did he simply mistake the word sheath for sleeve? Because I have heard people refer to a knife sheath as a sleeve in the past. But since it's not common terminology, everybody can interpret that a different way. But if this was new evidence not known to the public, would they and are they now violating the gag order again? Or at least violating what the gag order was intended to prevent? I mean, I'm just speculating here, but doesn't this seem like the type of information a gag order would pertain to? Unless this is the same type of new evidence as the stalking evidence, which we now know to be fake. Either way, are they looking for justice or a conviction? Because that statement serves no purpose other than causing prejudice. And how can you state that you want to trust the science here, but ignore the science behind the change of venue? That's like saying you trust the science that the earth rotates, but the sun rotates around the earth. I mean, just because you disagree with something doesn't mean it is scientifically inaccurate, or it has no basis in truth. The reality is you're going to hear a lot of things that you agree with and that you don't agree with. That is just the difficult situation they find themselves in right now. And I understand they feel out of control. And I understand how unnerving that must feel. But their rush and pursuit to gain control over this narrative, quite frankly, could cause a mistrial. It could cause appellate issues. Could it not? They go on and mention that they had a problem with JJ bringing up the issues of the courthouse, referring to its size and the number of staff. But I viewed all that as more of a supplementation to the overall ruling. Very similar to how an appeal would list every single argument regardless of how weak it is. Having a change of venue solely based on courtroom issues isn't strong enough to do anything. He simply had to wait for the science and the evidence to see if there was actual bias in Latah County. That was the problem here. It had nothing to do, or at least not a lot to do with the courtroom. It had to do with the bias. It had to do with your interviews. It had to do with the interviews that Bill Thompson gave. At least that's how I'm seeing it. Now, I'm open to being wrong, and if you disagree, please feel free to let me know down in the comments below.
This is it. This is the end.
Y'all be safe now.